Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, focusing on interactionism. Before we go into more depth on interactionism and its contributions to our understanding of society, it's worth recapping on some of the key concepts that are associated with interactionism. As opposed to structural theories such as functionalism and traditional Marxism, interactionism takes a social action approach to the study of society, suggesting that individuals display free will in their behaviours rather than being subject to social forces. Interactionism focuses on the ability of individuals and groups to make sense of society through their own interpretations and how they give meanings to the signs, symbols and interactions between individuals. They argue that these are socially constructed and vary from one society to the next, and so need to be interpreted on an individual level based upon past experience and subjective understanding. They also suggest that our study of society needs to be done by examining qualitative approaches, as human beings display different understandings of their role and those of social institutions. So we need to understand what motivates people to act in the way that they do, rather than simply state what they are doing. Interactionism has been developed in a number of different ways and branches off into different theoretical approaches. Possibly the most common we have come across are symbolic interactionism and labelling theory. But interactionism as a way of approaching society is developed through a range of key thinkers. Whilst associated more with social psychology and anthropology, nevertheless, interactionism has evolved over time from the ideas of Mead and the self, Blumer and the importance individuals attach to meaning of signs and symbols, through Goffman and the dramaturgical approach, through to the more sociological approach of Becker and his examinations of deviance and defining the process of labelling and the self-fulfilling prophecy. Interactionism is highly relevant to contemporary society, particularly examining its role in the media, education, crime, health, and culture and identity, amongst others. We'll start with the ideas of George Herbert Mead. Mead suggested that the key to understanding interactions with others was to actually identify that the self is separate from others. This occurs through our interactions with others and being able to understand that their behaviours and their viewpoints are different from our own. Once this is understood, usually in late childhood or early adolescence, our own self-concept starts to become influenced by how others around us interact and perceive us. We come to understand who we are by the reactions and interactions we have with others. We understand concepts such as our self-worth, attractiveness, level of intelligence through these interactions, and we also come to understand what society expects of us based upon these interactions. This approach suggests that those closest to us will have a greater impact in the development of our self-concept than social forces. However, we also learn what is expected from us in the terms of social roles through observing others. We understand that we need to take on certain characteristics in a specific context in order to gain social approval. If we use education as an example, wearing a uniform that is smart, clean and presentable wins us favour from teachers, while deviating from those rules may gain us favour with our peers. We will consciously make a choice to appeal to one or the other, based upon who we want to please. Mead's ideas were built upon by Blumer, who suggested that individuals will behave in certain ways because of how they interpret appropriate behaviour for that situation. For example, if you're at a football match and your team scores, you may cheer because it is appropriate to do so. However, if the other side scores, it's probably not a good idea to cheer around your fellow fans. You may understand that the reaction you gave in the first instance, cheering a goal, is not appropriate in that situation, so you don't repeat it. Blumer thought that these interactions were shaped by the interactions we have. Blumer thought that this was shaped by the interactions we have with others. Over time, these interactions come to shape our behaviour. If we learn there are negative consequences towards an action, we may not repeat it. Our views evolve as we learn those consequences, according to Blumer. They are not fixed responses that we have always given. This also suggests that individuals can continue to develop responses to their interactions with others. We can show free will and change our interpretation of a situation based upon the interactions of others, or as a reaction to other people's behaviour. Blumer's ideas suggest that people's behaviour has the potential to change and therefore is unpredictable. One of the more well-known interactionist approaches was suggested by Erving Goffman and the dramaturgical model. Goffman suggested that individuals take on different roles in society depending upon the social context they are in. For example, when you're around your friends, you will act and speak differently than you may do around your parents. Goffman would suggest this is because you are taking on two separate roles, one as a friend and one as a son or a daughter. You may also alter your behaviour in school around teachers, where you take on a third role of being a student. Each role requires you to act in a different way, and Goffman referred to this as impression management. Individuals look to present themselves in a certain way in a given situation. This includes your clothing, language, body language, gestures, appearance. We want to present ourselves in the most desirable way for that situation. For example, we may present one version of ourselves in school, but another version if we were going to a party. The clothes, language, your appearance would change. Goffman suggests that this is due to impression management, your desire to be socially accepted. He suggested that social interactions were key to understanding the self, because without positive reinforcement of aspects of your character, people may lose a sense of self. Alternatively, if you're not in a specific social context for a long period of time, you may lose the ability for impression management. Possibly the most well-known sociologist on the course associated with interactionism is Howard Becker, whose ideas have been seen in crime and education. Becker built upon the concept of the looking-glass self introduced by social psychologist Charles Cooley, and suggested that people often define themselves not by their own actions but by how others label those actions. For example, in schools, we may see having a laugh as just a way to pass time, but a teacher may see that as disruptive and attach a label of troublemaker to a student. Labels such as these have the potential to be internalised, and those labelled may see themselves in this way, particularly if further behaviours reinforce the teacher's perception of that student by his or her label. This may lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, labelling theory can be seen as a form of soft determinism, as people can reject labels and set out to prove them wrong, what is often referred to as a self-defeating prophecy. Let's look at some of the evaluations of interactionist ideas. We've seen it can be deterministic, and it assumes that concepts like labels and the self influence our behaviour. It also ignores some of the wider social conflicts and influences on people's behaviour, such as their social class, gender or ethnic background, which make interactionism more of a social psychological approach than a sociological one. And while interactionist methods such as ethnography and the use of qualitative data have advanced our understanding of human behaviour, it's highly subjective and tends to be done on a small scale. This leads to new knowledge being based upon the interpretations of researchers and niche groups that aren't generalisable to wider society. It focuses on the story of the underdogs, or to paraphrase Howard Becker, outsiders in society. Although some sociologists would say that that is its purpose, to uncover truths that are often not heard. But despite these criticisms, interactionism has made significant contributions to our understanding of individuals and social behaviours. Interactionist methodology changed the way in which research is conducted, introducing a greater understanding of subjects, what Weber referred to as Verstehen, and striving for the true meaning and motivations behind behaviours, rather than being reliant upon superficial data. As already mentioned, its focus on the underdogs of society is important to understand the broader meanings of acts, rather than relying upon generalised theories, particularly when we're investigating deviant behaviours. And finally, interactionism and its focus on meanings in individuals' motivations for behaviour is far more useful in a post-structural society such as the UK. It has greater flexibility to address the micro nature of the complex and diverse contemporary society. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, focusing on interactionism. Thanks for watching.